Hi, everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soike with For Better For Worse.
And Lisa Bataska with Canine Defined.
Hi. I hope you all are having a great weekend. It was a great weather today. We were inside learning some stuff. Anyway, today we wanted to talk about um, the process of learning and the reason it came up. I'm going to be honest with you. I caught myself uh, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. I was working with my training my young dogs, and I caught myself getting impatient with the beagle because she wasn't picking up what I wanted her to do easily, and I wanted her to hurry up and just figure it out. And I did catch myself, like I was like, wait a minute. she I was trying to get her up on a Cato board where my puppy did it, almost instantaneously, and he did a couple times and he got it. She was able to get on it, but wouldn't sit. So I was wanting her to sit, and I felt myself losing my patience with her because she didn't want to sit. And then I thought to myself, what is the big hurry? So she stands. She got up on the board and she's standing. So it kind of reminded me like that's where she is in her learning, and I have to and there's no need to be in a rush or hurrying to get anywhere because we're just gonna enjoy the training part. But we do a lot of dog sports at our place, and even with our pet dog owners, they want to hurry up and get the behaviors and get it done, and instead of really enjoying the process of the dog learning and making sure they learn it properly and well and make it have a really good behavior instead of just rushing through it. So I wanted to chat with, talk a little bit about that today, um, and as to why people just, what are some of the pros and cons of rushing things? Because sometimes if you have, for example, if you have a problem behavior, sometimes you want to hurry up and get that done. But if you're trying to rush to go compete with your dog, I don't understand what the rush is so much in that, right? Like you'll get there, you'll be able to trial your dog or show your dog. Why not just enjoy the process and trying to get there? And also getting to know your dog and what, really, really getting to it's like it's like dating someone. Like sometimes you date for a while and then you get married, maybe, or you decide after a while, nope, that's not working. So with dog training, it's kind of similar. It's like, okay, that didn't work, or that's you need to get to know how that dog reacts to what you're doing, and trying to and because it's almost like marrying somebody after a couple of weeks. Sometimes you get lucky and it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. And so, what was the rush on trying to get those behaviors? Have you found that to be? Because I see it more now, with people with competition dogs with their second and third dogs. I'm seeing quite a lot of it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I see it for sure in some competition stuff, but I see a lot of it also in the pet dog, right? Like, make it better right now. Like, 6 weeks, right? And I mean, 6 weeks is sometimes even a long time for people, which I find crazy because you're going to own this dog for potentially 16 years, right? So, what is 6 weeks of your commitment time? But yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you guys see it in your classes, but it's like people pay money and they come to 4 weeks out of the 6 weeks and then they just drop off the face of the earth and you never hear from them again. And it makes me sad because in a way is like, are you not getting what you think you were getting, or is it not happening fast enough? Like I should send out a survey or something for the people that drop out, right? Like, why didn't you come back? Did you get busy? Not what you wanted? Um, but yeah, I think in a world of everything at our fingertips, right? And especially I think COVID may have played a little bit of a role in that too, of like everything was online and we could still do things quickly that way, right? Have we lost relationship building a little bit?
You're frozen.
I am.
No, no. I
Oh,
think from what I've seen too with pet dog classes, I do understand or doing what we're doing in terms of like day school and day training. I always impress upon the importance of it takes time, right? There are no relationships that I'm aware of that are fast and hard besides one night stands, right? I mean, and those don't last. So, like anything that requires effort is takes more time. Relationships, friendships, marriage, stuff like that. Even, working with children. It's not okay, you're potty trained, done, get out, go away. We're all done, right? And that doesn't work that way. I also think it's hard for people to understand because if you haven't had a dog in a while, it's one thing to have a dog and then they get to a certain point and then you don't wait until you get another puppy years later and you're like, well, my previous dog wasn't like that. It's because you don't remember that situation, right? So your expectations are a little skewed based upon where you were with your previous dog. You can't just jump in where you were. And let's be honest, there's biological things going on that learning is different. And as you're growing, like the best, like we went to the Resilience Rainbow, we found out, like from a biological standpoint, right, the brain takes time to develop, and the best time to lay a lot of behaviors is when they're young. When they turn into teenagers, it's a little more tricky, and it becomes more redundancy of things that they know already, and prevention of rehearsal of other behaviors we don't want. So
Right.
it's a process.
Well, and then the other thing too is when, like, I'll pick on my little lab puppy. His recall was 100% up until I would say about 3 weeks to a month ago. It's not 100%. It's still pretty good, but it's not 100% anymore. So, so it's a little trickier because yes, he's changing, he's developing, and I have to remember to go back a little bit and make sure he's understanding what I want. Like he really is processing that information. I really want you to, um, you know, I really
And how,
want.
how old is he now?
He's 10 months.
Okay, well, there you go. Right, prime time teenager, right? Yay!
Yay!
Everyone's favorite.
Yeah, no, yeah, because his recall was 100%. Now it's like maybe it's 80, but still, which is not bad for his age. But uh, that 20% is what can get pretty gnarly. So,
You
and yeah,
say
you want
20. Let's check back in at 11 months. Be
yeah,
home at 10.
yeah, right. Uh, which is different than the beagle, right? The beagle is a year and 10 months, and her recall's terrible, but always has been. But the other thing with her is she's had like some stuff to work through, right? And while she's progressed incredibly quickly and she's doing really, really well, and that's what happened to me. I forgot, like, she seems so like a normal dog now, after all that, after she came to me last year, that I forget that she still has some stuff a little bit, and sometimes you have to take it a little easier with her. The relationship is a little different. So it's a little bit more of a process, and I have to be a lot more patient with her. Where with the puppy, he doesn't have any issues per se, except that he's an adolescent, which is it's I have to kind of, and this is where the enjoying the journey part is hard in training, because I want him to just as good of a recall he had when he was 5 or 6 months. I would like that now. I would still like to have it, which I realize it's not. I realize that's that's not going to happen. It's really challenging. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of think about it. What are the benefits of, okay, let's put it out there. Like if you want to rush through behavior and you have a pretty quick dog that kind of picks it up and you get it in there, and I'll give you an example, and I'm not proud of it. Cha-Cha, I was able to teach her a a moving stand outside the ring before we went in there. She did it. Does that mean that that behavior is really good and solid? No. Did I get through what I needed? Yes. But the truth is, that's not a solid behavior. She just learned it in a few minutes, but that doesn't mean it's going to be with her. Versus a behavior that you practiced, rehearsed, generalized, and really, really put some time in, then that's going to be a behavior that you're going to be able to stay and hold on to. Because I bet you, if I would have asked her to do a moving stand somewhere another time or somewhere else, she wouldn't have been able to do that because the learning wasn't quite as solid, right, as you taking your time. So does it sometimes pay to rush? Yes, but don't fool yourself into thinking that you have this solid behavior because you don't. So, what was I gonna say? Oh, I know what was the other thing I was gonna say. So that's just one of and also learning it is the fun, right? You like seeing, especially when you have a young dog, seeing how they've learned and how they've grown, and sometimes it's easy to forget when you look back. It's easy to forget how much they've grown in that time. Roscoe's a really perfect example. A little bit like Roomba, you forget how he now the way he moves through space and the way he looks like a normal dog all the time. So you don't think that there's a problem there, right? And you still there is. He's still figuring stuff out and all that. It's just that you don't see it as much. And but it's been a long process because you've had a year and change, Joanne.
Yeah, a year in May.
Yeah.
It's actually really funny though, because when you have a dog that potentially has issues with people, right? Talking about maybe going too slow sometimes. I think those behaviors, right? You can't. I don't want to say can't. If there's no problem with going a little too slow, right? There's no problem with that, and I've done a lot of work, but at a snail's pace, right? Because I want the building blocks to be really strong. And what was I up for? Something at your building a couple months ago, and he was on a 6 foot leash, so he was right there. He's maybe 4 feet from me, and I was doing something, and somebody came in, and all I saw was he looked at her, and she's like, "Oh hey," and I was like trying to stay calm, right? And the look on his face, he was like, "Oh, okay, I guess we're doing this now." Like okay, right? And then she didn't feed him, so he's like, "Where's my mom? Where's my cookie?" And I was like, "Yay!" Like, and he comes over, and thank God I had cookies on me. We had a cookie party, but right when you have a dog that's afraid of people, and then doesn't look like it, and also doesn't react that way when somebody touches him, like the whole time your heart's like beating in your chest. Right? I'm at a dog event. Like, I think I was judging. Can we please not like write up the judge for having an aggressive dog? But like, part of that journey for him was proofing against people, because that's what human beings do. When a dog makes eye contact with them, they go, "I must touch you," and
Right.
so I did. I proofed that a lot. Like I come under my hand and drive in, and people are gonna come over you and those types of things. And it was the first time that I actually, not even meaning to, put the training into practice. And because it had been a year before I really, no, I didn't even let that happen, right? Accidents happen. But before he even put himself in that situation, to see the slow journey worked really well. Because I would not have put him in there, meaning I was going even slower than I needed to for him, but it didn't hurt him.
No, no. And I've never, I mean, I guess to a certain extent you can go too slow for certain behaviors, right? I think for behavior, would you guys agree? For behavior issues, you really going slow is not going to be an issue. Or if you're teaching mechanical skills, going
Right.
too slow could be boring for the
Yeah.
dog. And I mean, wouldn't you agree that that's true? Because I think like if it's a behavior issue, like the people thing, the dog thing, all resource guarding, all that, slow is always better. Versus if you're teaching them the dog a down, going too slow on that is would be maddening for some dogs.
Well, you'll get stuck, right? Stuck on reinforcement, your rate of reinforcement, where you're at, where's the cookie, and so forth. And then you get into the stuck of the loop of luring type of situation, I think. So it becomes tricky in that knowing when to move forward. And I think sometimes people get afraid to move forward for sake of the dog being wrong in that situation. And I think that that's where we get stuck with treat training, right? Reinforcement training. I don't have the power if I don't have the power of helping my dog be right, then I can't get the behavior type of thing. So it becomes a little like it just becomes tricky. But going back to the behavior stuff, for example, like so today, my husband's kids and two grandsons, one's 1 and one's 3, came over. My dogs don't see children. They don't ever. Like they don't come to my home ever. And so today, here they come. And I had the dogs out on the porch, and then blah, blah, blah. Ivy's not a fan. The other dogs are like, yeah, something's happening. And they're going crazy. I have 2 additional dogs in my house. So they're barking. And I'm like, crap, my puppy, who Riff's going to be a year old on Wednesday. And he's going to be a year old. So I'm all worried. I'm like, oh, crap, I don't want him to like feed off of the other dogs, right?
Right.
So I shoo everybody in the house, put them in crates. I left Riff out. And then Timber, who's kind of like my pseudo son because he's always here all the time.
Yeah.
And he loves kids, like he loves people, and he's around kids all the time. So I was like, well, if I'm going to put him with anybody, I'm going to put him with an appropriate dog who's like, so if he yells, it's not a big deal. So then the kids have thumbs. So they're outside, we're playing ball. And then I let the dogs out, and everyone's like, yeah, kids are great. We love them. So then their experience when exposure was that. It wasn't like I tried to train it, and they didn't have any super fearful behavior issues that I was concerned with. That's why I wouldn't. So, I mean, like, there's a fine line, right? As far as when you train and when you don't, and how you want to help manage the situation to help good stuff happen. Mm-hmm. By the end, little Riff was following the 2 kids around, smelling them behind him. He's like, hey, throw the ball. And then he'd get all excited in his little tongues. And so then that was it. And that was our experience. And I'm like, I'm good with that. You know what I mean? So it's like so many things to think about. You know, when do you train? When don't you? When does training become kind of a crutch? What are we doing to make it better? How are we helping it? You know, and I think we get stuck in that. But
yes.
It all comes down to, as we all know, reading the dog, understanding the dog's body language to determine when can I help, when can I not, what's helping, what's hindering, am I stepping in too soon, stuff like that.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're trying to cram a lot of information, too, is, you're trying to teach your dog a whole chain of behaviors. So they can only really focus on one thing at a time. You're trying to teach them to go over there and sit and stay and do all this other, all this other stuff. So you have to do that in slices, but progress them as they need to. Where, like in Joanne's case with the people, she took a long time and she took her time, but she needed to do it that way. Trying to rush that would have been a gravest mistake because you have to make sure that dog is real solid, that when that little incident happened, that while Joanne was heart was beating, the dog was like, all right, weird, but all right.
Mm-hmm.
All the training that's already gone into that, right? Otherwise, guess what? If she would have tried to rush or cut corners, because that's what people do, cut corners, the story might not have ended so happily, right? So it's one of those things you want to really think about it. So, and also you want to make sure that as you're building these behaviors that they have, like Joanne alluded to it earlier, they have a good solid building a foundation of it. So if your dog has a really, like, for example, if you want a good sit stay, you have to have a good sit first. Because if you don't have a good sit, the stay part's not going to happen if your sit isn't really good. But I see people doing that all the time. The dog barely learned how to sit. They want him to stay too. It's like, okay, I don't think that's going to work so great, but all right. So those are kind of things, and it's like always why. I guess to me, I would ask, why am I in such a hurry to get this dog whatever training done? Why is this such a rush for me? Because many times it's not for the dog, it's for us.
Sure.
Right? It is.
Yep. I was gonna say Janice had a nice comment. Part of the journey with my new pup is learning, as I did as a mom of human kids, that each is different. My pup is different than my old boy and learns more quickly, but I have found that rather than lots of repetition with him, I have to give him a break periodically, which is never a bad idea with a puppy anyway. But I think sometimes too, and I hear it from people who do, I hate to say know better, but like, you've had dogs forever and you're like, well, it's not so and so learned, Fido learned this super fast, and I don't know why Rex doesn't get it. Like, Rex is just stubborn and dumb, and it's like, no, no, different dog, right? Like, just like Janice says, right? Maybe the dog learns fast, and so what do we do as human beings? Let's
Push.
learn something else. Let's learn something else. Let's learn something else,
Right.
right? And just I'm gonna sell my t-shirts, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you
You
should.
should. Right.
So it's hard though when you have a new relationship, and something like Janice is talking about, where you're having a great time, and that new dog is just such a good learner, and you're having fun teaching them stuff, and it's going really well. As a human being, I think it's hard sometimes to not get caught up in that. We're learning new things. Let's go.
Right.
Right? Because it seems like both parties are enjoying it, which I think embrace the teaching. Just don't rush to the whatever that end game is. Like, I want to do a nosework trial, or I want to be in a rally trial, or I want to take my dog to the baseball game. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Well,
don't.
Amy Barth made a good comment. So many people seem driven that brag that Fluffy was the first dog of his breed to get X title. It's like, yeah, but the only one that matters to is you. You're not impressing anybody else by it.
Well, and I always joke about that too, because I'm like, in any venue of any sport ever, can you name who the first dog to get whatever title was? Because I have zero idea.
That is such a true statement. I couldn't
Right?
tell you. I couldn't tell you. You're right. So, and I'm going to pick on Deb Evans. I know she has a new puppy now, and she's kind of eased into it with this puppy. And what I mean by that is she's doing a lot of socialization. She's doing a lot of enjoying the puppyhood piece. She's enjoying that part of it, of his life, right? Which is really, really important. She's enjoying how he's learning and how he's growing, and she's putting him in classes and all that, as she should, to get him training. But she's also enjoying the puppy part of it, the socialization, the growing, the developing, the social aspect of the dog and how he's doing. So, and I could see it in her. She's eased into it, and she's enjoying the process, because before you know it, they're going to be adult dogs, and it'll be over. So it's always nice to enjoy the process of them being puppies or being young, and having that part of it. And some same with dogs that you rescue. Like Roomba was not a puppy when I got her; she was a year, but where she came from to where she is now, it's amazing. Like, she's a almost different dog. And I'm enjoying how much she's learning, and every little milestone is kind of a big deal for me, because she's really she's come a long way. Not that my lab puppy isn't a big deal, but he had a pretty nice start in life. So he's has not had a day of worry or woe in his whole life. So I kind of, his milestones is like, no, you should be able to figure that out, buddy. Even though I still, having patience and all that. But yeah, he picks things up quickly because there is no other things for him to worry about, right? So it's pretty funny. Yeah, where the Beagle has had a little bit of a, she's had a little bit of a challenging, not so much, because she seems to have a decent personality just in general. Just didn't come out as a young, where she was. Now you'd never know that she's where she came from. So, uh, and the other thing is, when you have young dogs, is making sure their attention is on the task. And that, even if you have an older dog too, right? That you need to make sure that part of the process and the learning is, can you get their attention? And a lot of people just want to, the dog doesn't have the ability to give you that attention move, and they just want to move through things very quickly. So it's very challenging. And as Joanne and Lisa said too, it's like, people come, they want, I mean, we get it all the time, and I know they do too. Is my dog going to be trained in 6 weeks? No. The answer is no. I wish. You'll have some basic skills, but you're not going to have a trained dog, right?
Well, it's always, to me, it's always crazy. So, we had a dog that came. I don't know how long it was. Maybe a month, maybe. And we were doing stuff with the dog. Blah blah blah. He's growing, giant, big boy, and 6 months old. And they're like, we just want it to stop. We don't want to put him away because, of course, he's not going to learn. But we want him to be out with the kids when they're running and playing in the yard. And I'm like, we don't want them running and jumping on them. So, okay. So, of course, you tell what needs to happen, and there's some people that are committed to the process and helping them change, and there are other people that aren't. Right. So some people want the quick fixes, and it is very discouraging, I think, at times for us, at least for me, when you're like, it takes time, and then there are other options, opportunities that are available to people for quick fixes. And
Yes.
to me, it becomes frustrating because I'm like, well, and I know this sounds a little judgy, but it's like, if you don't want to take your time to go through the steps, then why have a dog? Like, what's the point?
Mhm.
Like, they're sentient beings. They require education just like any other, we do that for children. They go through all the grade school, the grammar, kindergarten, et cetera, on up. Why would it be any different? This is a learning being. It has the same biological ways about it as an individual does. Learning is the same. So, like, why bother then? Why bother have a dog if you want it to be a robot or to immediately react based upon a push of a button? So
Yeah,
it's
I would
that
agree with
gets
that.
discouraging.
Well, and
Yeah.
there are humans who still send their kids to military school or to, you know what I mean? Like those humans exist for humans too.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right.
personally don't have experience with military school.
Well,
I'm just guessing it's very do what I tell you to when I tell you. But
well, yeah, you don't have a choice. Yeah.
right, like and what kind of life is that for any sentient being to not have a choice? That's the stuff that makes me sad, right? Like,
Right.
well, they should know better. It's like how?
Yeah. Well, right. And it goes back to, uh, do you, when you're teaching or working on the training of the dog, and I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes you may not want to train, and that's part of it. That's okay. If you don't feel like it, or if you're stressed out, or you're having a bad day, it's better not to train than to have poor training. And we always say that, right, all the time. Um, but you also want to make sure that your dogs really understand the behavior. You want to teach them things where they, no matter what happens or where they go, they can do it, right? You want to get it to that point, every behavior. But you think the dog, well, he sits at home, and they expect the dog should be able to sit everywhere else when there's like a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And it's like, it doesn't work like that,
Right.
right? It's like you need to take your time. And like Lisa said, if you don't have time to train the dog, and again, everybody's goals are different, right? So, for example, some people, they just want to be able to take the dog for a walk, the dog not potty in the house, and just be, chilled companion. Okay, that's a pretty realistic goal for most people, but some of us have other, they want to do other things. They want to able to go to the, do more hiking, more, they want to do more things with their dogs. So you have to put in more training to be able to achieve those things that you want to do. So that's really, it really is, when you get a dog or you have a dog, you have to figure out what are the goals, and then how you're going to go about teaching them and enjoying that process of them learning and all that. And then make sure that the dog really understands what you're trying to teach them. They really get it. Because I think I've had people come in, I don't know about you guys, I've had people come, well, he knows what so and so, what he knows what down means.
At home.
And I'm like, no, he really doesn't understand what down means. He knows it. He knows, he's able to, because some dogs can generalize easier than others. And it's like, he doesn't understand what down means in this context. So you want to make sure that you give the dogs the understanding, because the better they understand, the which kind of goes back to what we're doing here, right? We want you to understand as much as you can about dogs, because then the more you know, the better off your dog is, and the better off your subsequent dogs. And you might also pass it on to somebody else, right? And give them that information, and say, hey, I thought about this, or I remembered this. And you should be, back in the day when I first started training, the trainers were like, oh well, it's like the stuff was a big secret. It's like, no, we want you to be really good, and and the better you are, the better it is for your dog. And so that's why we want you to really understand, like, how to hold on one second, because my
She's gonna
husband.
go yell at her husband.
I think, and two, like things to consider, right? So, like the age, the where the dog is at in their growth, it matters. The
Yes.
type, the genetics, they matter. What the past history is, it matters. Who the individual is, it matters, right? So, all of that, learning, environment, where they live, all the things are contributory to who that individual is. And it's going to either, it may hinder or help. I mean, I'll tell you, like, puppies are my favorite to train. Teenagers, not so much. They're more challenging. But, and then they turn into adults, and I'm like, yes, we've made it, right? So, but it still doesn't mean that learning stops depending on the situation. But
Yeah. So let me play on that, because I know Nancy was talking about Mambo's come earlier, right? He's 10 months old. Like, it was great. It's degraded a little bit. And Lisa said, how old? So this was something like the three of us I know have been like 20 years into this on training dogs and behavior. And we've done a lot of like the behavior piece of it, right? And so when we went to the Resilience Rainbow, it was nice to put like what's happening in the brain on top of it. So we got neurology and neuroscience on top of what we already see in the behavior piece. And so one of the things that you hear us joke about all the time, and it's not a joke, it's just we try and humor ourselves to get through those stages. Adolescence sucks, right? And so what Dr. Kathy Murphy was talking about was all the things that happen in the brain to make it suck, right? Which is things that weren't there before start coming online. The HPA axis that you heard us talk about, right, is twice as active. So dogs can go from 0 to 60. They're more impulsive. They're more willing to be like, I don't want to listen to you, right? Much more emotional. And all those things have nothing to do with you. And they don't know why they're doing it either. It's like, ask any teenager in the world, like, why would you make a decision that's stupid? I don't, it seemed like a good idea at the time, right? And our dogs do the same things. So one of the most interesting things that they talked about was sometimes during those periods of adolescence, like, don't stop training it, but don't focus so hard on it. Right? Because you're fighting an uphill battle. And if you put really good stuff into your puppy and you create a really good relationship with your puppy, just put up those sails and ride those rough waters. And a lot of times the really good foundations that you put into your puppy that have degraded so in adolescence will come back once they hit 2 years old, get through that adolescent period. And I found that so interesting, because what do we do as people, right? We're like, no, I can't let them do that. That's bad behavior. I don't like it. Like, and you seem to be fighting it so hard. Sometimes just like manage it. Don't let it happen instead of trying to train it so hard. And it may not be an issue by the time they hit, 2.5.
Or if it is an issue, or if it is like you can't get through that, right? The emotions are so high because the HPA axis is twice as active, right? So what does that mean? That means the stress hormones are going nuts, right? So I have big feelings, the time of big feelings of everything. Have you ever had to try to have a conversation with somebody who has big feelings? Yeah, it doesn't work. Good luck, right? So now you're going to do it with a species that doesn't even speak our language. Well, that doesn't work either. And also, remember too, if they're having those really strong emotions and then you try to use some sort of corporal punishment or something to that effect, that's no bueno. That's no good. So when when we lay that foundation as puppies, right? And one of the other things we were talking about is during teenage time is the resilience training, the pattern training.
Right.
Revert back to patterns so that that way, if I've done some pattern training as puppy and I specifically design a routine or have a specific way that I handle things, it's going to go into autopilot so they don't have to think about it, right? It doesn't have to process. So those are things to consider when you're working with dogs, because we get tons of them in day school and they're challenging, but we've implemented a lot of specific routines and expectations, and they're consistent across the board, which the dogs are like, yeah, I get it. And the problem is that even though we're consistent with it, when they go home, it's a different story because they have lives. And then, I got to get dinner together and I'm bringing my puppy and then I have to feed my dog, etc. So they get tied up into life, and then some of that stuff goes away and you can't beat yourself up over it. Like, I'm like, you know, trust the process, right? Is what we know. Trust the process. It'll all come together. When Riff at 7 months old, I took him into a place and he was like, yeah, no, I can't do this. And I gave him a cookie and he's like, I can't do the cookie either. Was sitting there, was watching around. I gave him a cookie again. He ate the cookie, but he's like, yeah, I still can't go forward. So I gave him a minute to process to see, can you handle this? And that was 7 months old. He said, no way. I said, okay, we're done. Picked him up, put him back in the car, went about my business. And, and then he started, not that long ago, started doing the Dino bark when anybody comes in the house. I'm like, oh my God, that's so annoying. So I'm like, okay, he's having big feelings. I need to interrupt that and then redirect him somewhere else. Okay, fine. Because I don't want a little yapper. But that's gotten better already with me just interrupting and moving on to something different, but not saying, no, don't do that. So you got to watch the dog's body language to tell you which way to go. But
Right.
yeah, and then here we were today. I was pretty surprised and pretty happy with it. And I'm like, yay, we're moving forward somehow. So,
And when you are focused on the process of the learning process of the dog and the training, you do pay more attention to the details, right? The devil's in the details. Like, is he sitting crooked? Is he? And then this goes to what we had the workshop today with Dr. Rosemary about structure. If all of a sudden his sits were nice and straight, and all of a sudden his sits are different, when you're in the process and you're just working on the basics and just learning, you notice all the details about your dog and what's going on and what's happening. And you might notice things that you wouldn't notice if you were in a hurry to get that done, right? And to move through that, right? Because it's like, especially, yeah, it's like if all of a sudden your dog is sitting and then it's crooked. Well, why is that now? It wasn't doing that before. Is it that he's going through a growth process or whatever? So that's a real big piece of really focusing and enjoying that process of training the dog, because you can then pay more attention to the details in that moment in time instead of just, okay, I got to train this, then I got to do this, then I got to move on to this, and you're going to miss a whole lot in between there, right? So you want to be able to focus on those details. And then also you also want to, that helps, you know, when you build a resilience on the dog, right? The dog will be able to, when you take your time to learn, teach them patterns, they'll be resilient to any kind of difficulty or change or different environments. You build that in your training if you're not rushing through everything, right? Because I think that's where it's like there's things that fall off when you're trying to rush through it. And haven't you all done something? And I know I'm very guilty of it because I can be very impatient, and I just want to hurry up and get it done. And sometimes it's much more expensive later
yeah,
when you're trying to rush through it,
yep.
and trying to get it done in a hurry. So I have, over the years, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it, because it is, that's when it's not a good practice, right? It's just not a good.
Yep. I think Suzanne said it best, right? Where she has her whole thing. It says, life is not a checklist, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because let's be fair, 20 years ago, I'm getting a new puppy. Okay, what do you got to do? We got to introduce them to 100 people and make sure there's a wheelchair and a walker, and to buy cars and motorcycles and scooters and big wheels, and like when was the last time my dog saw a big wheel?
Yeah.
Right. So I think
Yeah.
as we learn and grow, the other thing too, when we talk about doing these so people can learn, right? That's one of the joys social media has brought us. I love
Yeah.
that pie chart that's out there now. It's been out there for a few years where it says like what people think socializing a puppy is, what socializing a puppy really is, and really it's like what 75% of it is like safety and security and trust and relationship, and the rest of it is like strange dogs, strange people.
Right.
um I think the big thing for me in the whole process is like what what do you want to come out? Do you want to come out with a dog that does sports, or do you want to come out with a dog that loves you, trusts you with its life? I mean, that's what I want. And the sports stuff comes along with it, right? For me, like if my dogs trust me, they're going to do, they're going to try to do whatever I ask them to do, right? And they still get a choice in the matter. And I just love how the world has changed, knowing like furthering our journeys too, and then being able to share it with other people too.
I
Yeah,
guess
definitely never expect dog number one because now I have four dogs, and I've had many dogs before these guys, and I have to say, they're none of them are none of them are the same, and like I said, I've been a little stressed, and I haven't really worked with my puppies as much as I should. But I try to just push on and do the little, I got to do a little training today with them. So, take what you can and do the best you can with that and build on what you have. And like I said, I'm not in a rush because everything will be there when you get there because you'll get there soon enough, right?
And for me, I think it's important for my dogs to grow mentally and physically before I really jump into some things, right? Because I think, other things we don't consider when we're pushing for certain behaviors is that their bodies, not just their minds, are developing.
Mhm.
And you
Hmm.
have to be careful with how much you push on some of those things. Like, I love agility, but I'm not going to risk, because in the past I've risked injury, and saw as my dogs aged how I pushed and things happened. And so now I'm more particular about certain things. And I still love agility, but I'm not super pushy about the things that I want to do with them. I want them to first, relationship is the most important to me. Like if I go somewhere, I don't care if my dog can do a sit stay 50 feet away while everybody's running around. I'm more concerned that my dog trusts that I'm able to be at their side. And if they're uncomfortable, they're like, hey, this is not cool for me. Okay, cool. I got it. Thanks for letting me know. And I'll go according to who my dog is based upon whatever. And I'll play whatever games they want to play. But I'm
Right.
not in a rush, I have to say. And very truly and honestly, I'm in a position where at previously when I was living in Illinois, I had a lot more access to different trials and things like that. Now it takes a lot more time for me to get up and do those things. And those are tough. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It is really kind of a question for me if I really, the time and the convenience. And some people are willing to drive. Well, I'm not a serious competitor. I really am not.
She would
I
be if
will,
trials were at noon.
yes. No, I mean, and honestly, you have to think about for everybody. Some people will just play and everything, and that's cool. And I really love training and working it.
Right.
But as far as playing and whatever, that's cool. Like if you can do that, that's awesome that you can do that. It really is. Because I do think like when I had the ability and I had more access, my dogs, yeah, we had a good time playing and stuff, and it was fun and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's different now. My lifestyle is just different. So
Yeah. Well, no, and the thing is, it's like you need to have a short, just like anything, and for those of you who do, whether it's competition or whatever, you have to have smaller goals
yeah.
and focus on those smaller goals as you're on your way to whatever your big goal is, and the big goals, if you will, are kind of moving targets, right?
Hmm.
Oh, I want to get my dogs, I don't know, championship of whatever. Well, it's a big goal, but you need to focus on a lot of things before then,
along the
right?
way.
And as long as you have a plan along the way, it really helps you kind of take it in small steps, and before you know it, you'll get there. And the big question to ask: do you want to get there? How do you want to get there? Right? It's like, do you want to get there with the best performance that you and your dog can do? Doesn't mean it's number one, but that you and your dog are giving their best and enjoying that competition, or do you just want to barely get by and just I think that takes away from the fun of just
I think it depends on the sport.
yes. I would
I am
well
I am a barely get by obedience rally person.
yeah, me
Just saying, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, right?
me
Which
too. You are so right.
the obedience people I look at, they're just like, but here's the thing. I have one dog that enjoys it, so we do it because we have fun together.
Right,
I don't have that much fun that I'm going to put all the time in that it takes
right,
to
right,
score really well at those sports. I'm not like, I like it, but I like other things better. And I think my dog does too. So I'll do it because we have fun. But
right.
what does the end game look like to me? I don't care. Maybe getting a green ribbon when we walk out of the ring, like maybe not. But I'm never mad at my dog.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, Joanne, because Tango and I are doing our first obedience trial next weekend. And that's exactly and, and that's exactly right. It's like, well, we'll see. We're gonna have a good time because he enjoys it. He has a good time. He
Are
has a
you
good
playing Little League or do you have a stand-in punter?
well, for rally, I have a stand-in punter. But yeah, it really it depends on we what kind of training, and that's the other thing. And this is something I'm struggling with in nose work. I want when whatever sport or whatever thing you're asking your dog, which is this is the other thing about going too fast. When you go too fast, you are putting pressure on that dog, and that in that situation, you are taking some of the fun out of it for that dog when you put that much pressure on the dog to hurry up and learn it, right? Or when you take that dog to trial when the dog is really not ready, you're putting that stress on the dog, unless you really truly are like, we're just going to see what happens and that's it, and really own that, right? Because the truth is, if you haven't trained the dog to the level that you want, if you want to be first place and you have not trained to that level, then why are you expecting to do that, right? I mean, and you're putting in, and it goes back to relationship, right? If you're putting pressure on the dog, whether you want the dog to learn it, and you're putting so much pressure and focus on that whatever you want him to learn, and that you put pressure, you really take away, and there is a trust issue that then expires for the dog, because they're like, wow, she's so unpredictable. Sometimes she'll be nice, and sometimes she's just a whack out when she wants to, when you want to train. So it really can affect that relationship early on, putting all that pressure on that dog for that particular, for that whatever that sport it is. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Carolyn. So I will just tell her quick little story. This was back when I was a new UKC judge and we sort of still like worked our way and gave people training advice. I don't do that anymore. But anyway, so I met her and she has this beautiful Dutchie, young, beautiful Dutchie, and she was doing a really nice job, but you could just tell the dog was not having the best time and she was very stressed, right? When she came out, like she loved playing with her dog, but you could just tell he was like, and she was like, walking to the line, and they did well. But I remember talking and chatting with her, and she said, some of the group that she had sort of been with was really focused on titles and like moving your way through, and so that's what she did, right? Because that's what she thought you were supposed to do, and we kind of had a nice, sweet little conversation, like, are you having fun? Well, sort of. Like, I mean, yeah, I like the game, but is your dog having fun? And it's just, who cares? You will get there and you'll enjoy and remember it way better just going at your own pace and having fun with your dog. So, it's really nice to hear that now. I don't know how old he is now. He's got to be what, 7 or 8, 9, maybe. But you best advice ever is what she said, and thank you, Carolyn, because I'm glad you took that to heart and you really enjoyed the journey. It's what it's all
Right.
about.
Well, because it's really one of those things. Putting pressure on the dog, it's no fun for anybody,
Hmm.
for the human or the dog. How fun is that? You have to push the dog, or you're worried about the dog not being able to qualify, and it's like that's not a good time. That's not fun at all. And that's what I mean. It's like, why are people in a hurry to be in that situation? I don't understand. Um, yeah, and just it's just taking uh, definitely taking like baby steps and enjoying the process, because the truth is it's very um our time with our dogs, and I know we say it all the time, but it really is like, I can't even believe, my Chacha's been gone almost a year and a half, and I can't even believe it. It's feels like, I still look see her. uh, oh, in the crate where I put the puppy was her crate. And you look in there, and she used to be in there all the time. And so it's like the time is short, and I tend to want to like rush through things at times. Not so much with my dogs, but other things. It's like, nah, because some of the stuff, like even with my own business, it's like, wow, this is this is where we were, and this is where we are now, and trying to get from point A to point B. I missed some stuff in between that I probably should have enjoyed more, or been more, I don't know, enjoyed that part more, right? And I didn't, because I was too big in a hurry to get from point A to point B. With the dogs, I really don't like. I'm starting my puppy in agility. He's 10 months old. I know, like, I'm not even trialing. It's like it's gonna be a couple of years. We're just gonna train and have a good time for right now. That's all we can do. Just because he's so young, I'm not gonna push him for that, because I don't. I want him to live a long life with in a good structured body. So I'm not gonna destroy it. Just because I'm in a hurry to go to get a couple of ribbons. I mean, it's not worth it. So, um, yeah, and Carolyn, it's really hard because there are people who tend to push their dogs, and
Hmm.
that's why you have to be the advocate for your own, and just do what you like and do what you enjoy at the pace that you like and the pace that you enjoy, to make sure that when you go to the line, you feel good about where you are in that place, in that with that dog in that moment in time, right? But yeah, putting all that pressure on the dogs and on yourself just takes away from the whole experience of owning it. Like Lisa, going back to what Lisa says, of owning a dog and having a dog, and sharing your life with the dog, it takes away from it, right? Well, it's like if you get married and you're like, you need to hurry up and do this, and and push to do. You're not enjoying those moments with your spouse or your significant other. So it's like, enjoy that process, and don't push. It'll be, and things work out the way they should. So I'll keep you up to date what happens next week, because yeah, it'll be interesting.
Gonna say you're not enjoying the fact that he's trying to cook dinner while you're on Facebook Live. You should enjoy his journey.
I don't- he's putting dog food away. That's what he's doing, which is, appreciated.
Throw some chocolate at him.
Yeah, right.
Positive reinforcement.
Yeah, right. All right. This was just a little reminder. Like, enjoy that process and really take your time to really teach your dogs the behaviors you want, like solid, because you'll be so much happier on the other side of that. I guarantee it. Like with my recalls and with my two older dogs, they like my dogs. I'm able to, if I don't do it, but they are so good off leash, and they stay with me, and they're with me all the time, and they just be they trust, we worked on that, and we it took a long time to get there, but we're there, right? And it's like, it's really nice to be to and we took a long time, to be able to enjoy that part of our journey. Like today, they're loose in my parking lot. They come, they just stay with me. It's just really such a nice thing, and I worked really hard for that, because I really wanted that. That was really important to me. Obedience, well, we'll
Free
see what.
ribbon.
Oh my god, We'll see what that looks like next week.
Nice.
Uh, Deb says getting Zippy into nose was so helpful to me in training. I
Yeah,
feel
get
like it helped me connect with them. Yeah, yeah, you find it. Yes, right. Yeah, it's you find it more than just nose work. Yep, you're. I could see it, Deb. You're easing into that whole process of having and doing other things and kind of focusing, which is what it's all about. Enjoying that because you won't be a puppy for long. So there you go. All right, all. Thank you for tuning in. Next, I can't. I think we're gonna put out a schedule with what's coming up. I think the 23rd we have Don Blair, and
Need video of your obedience trial, Lori Monarsic says.
oh my God, I might, but only for a select few people. Anyway, all right, guys. We'll see you all next time. Bye
Bye,
bye.
everybody.